Sarah had spent 3 hours making herself deliberately unattractive, convinced that any man interested in her bank account would run the moment he saw her in oversized sweatpants and a stained hoodie. What she didn't expect was to meet someone who would see straight through her disguise to the heart she'd been protecting for far too long. The coffee shop smelled like cinnamon and second chances. Sarah adjusted her thick framed glasses, the ones she'd borrowed from her grandmother's drawer, and tugged at the ratty sweater that hung like a potato sack on her slender frame. Her hair, usually sleek and professionally styled, was pulled into a messy bun with deliberately frizzy strands escaping in every direction. She'd even skipped makeup entirely, something she hadn't done since high school. This was her insurance policy. Her protection. After 3 failed relationships with men who'd been more interested in her inheritance than her interests, Sarah had developed a foolproof test. If a blind date couldn't see past terrible clothes and zero glamour, he wasn't worth her time. The bell above the door chimed, and Sarah glanced up from her phone. A man walked in, and her breath caught despite herself. He wasn't what she expected. Mark was tall, yes, but there was a gentleness in his eyes that photographs hadn't captured. He wore jeans with a small stain on one knee, paint, maybe, and carried himself with the slightly exhausted grace of someone who'd been awake since dawn. His eyes scanned the room, landing on her. Sarah waited for the flicker of disappointment, the subtle shift in expression she'd seen before. Instead, Mark's face broke into a warm smile. "Sarah?" he asked, approaching her table. She nodded, bracing herself. "I'm so glad you picked this place," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Best coffee in the city, and they make this incredible apple turnover that my daughter, Emma, would absolutely lose her mind over." Sarah blinked. No comment about her appearance. No awkward pause. Just genuine warmth and an immediate mention of his daughter, the 7-year-old he'd been raising alone since his wife passed away 2 years ago. "You look comfortable," Mark continued, flagging down a waitress. "That's honestly refreshing. My last date showed up in heels so high she could barely walk. We spent the whole evening with her in pain, and I felt terrible about it." Something in Sarah's chest loosened slightly. This wasn't the script she'd expected. They ordered coffee, and Mark immediately launched into a story about Emma's recent obsession with building birdhouses. He spoke with his hands, animated and completely unself-conscious. He showed Sarah pictures on his phone, a little girl with gap-toothed grin holding up a lopsided wooden structure. "It's not exactly architectural genius," Mark laughed, "but she's so proud of it. We hung it in the backyard last weekend, and she checks it every morning before school to see if any birds have moved in yet." Sarah found herself smiling genuinely for the first time in months. "Does she know you're here? On a date?" Mark's expression softened. "Yeah, she actually helped me pick out this shirt." "Well, she picked out a different shirt, one with a dinosaur on it, but I explained that might be too casual. She's been my little cheerleader about getting back out there. Says I'm too lonely, and that she needs someone to help her gang up on me during board games." The vulnerability in his voice made Sarah's throat tight. She'd spent so much time protecting herself from men who wanted something from her that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be in the presence of someone who simply wanted connection. "What about you?" Mark asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. "What's your story? And please don't give me the rehearsed first date version. I get enough of that from my job interviews." Sarah hesitated. The whole point of this outfit, this test, was to remain guarded. But something about Mark's openness made her walls feel suddenly unnecessary. "I'm tired," she admitted. "Tired of people wanting me for the wrong reasons. Tired of feeling like I have to be someone I'm not to be valued." Mark nodded slowly. "I get that. After Rachel died, everyone wanted to fix me. Set me up with people, give me advice, tell me how to raise Emma. Everyone had an opinion about what I needed. Nobody really asked what I wanted." "What did you want?" Sarah asked softly. "Someone real," he said simply. "Someone who wouldn't run when Emma has a nightmare and climbs into bed between us at 2 in the morning. Someone who understands that I'm a package deal, and that my priority is raising a good human being, not impressing anyone at fancy restaurants." They talked for 3 hours. The coffee grew cold, refilled, grew cold again. Mark told her about teaching high school history, about Emma's love of dinosaurs and her fear of thunderstorms. Sarah found herself sharing things she'd never told anyone: her volunteer work at the children's hospital, Her secret dream of writing a novel, her complicated relationship with the wealth she'd inherited from grandparents she'd barely known. Wait, Mark said suddenly, his eyes widening with recognition. Sarah Mitchell. Are you the Sarah Mitchell who donated the new pediatric wing at County General? Sarah's stomach dropped. Here it was. The moment everything changed. That's me, she said quietly, waiting for his demeanor to shift. Mark was silent for a moment, then shook his head with a small laugh. Emma spent 2 weeks there last year with pneumonia. That new wing, those private rooms, the play areas, you have no idea what that meant to families like us. She wasn't just sick in a hospital, she had a space that felt safe. His eyes were bright with emotion. Thank you, truly. Sarah felt tears prickling her own eyes. He wasn't calculating her net worth. He was thinking about his daughter. I wanted to help, she said. Money sitting in an account doesn't do anyone any good. No, Mark agreed, but putting it to use takes heart. Takes someone who sees beyond themselves. Sarah looked down at her awful sweater, her grandmother's glasses, her deliberately disheveled appearance, and suddenly felt foolish. She'd been testing Mark's character while hiding her own. Can I be honest about something? She asked. Please. I dressed like this on purpose. To see if to test if you could look past appearances. Mark glanced at her outfit as if seeing it for the first time. Then he smiled, not mockingly, but with understanding. I kind of figured, he admitted. The glasses don't match your face shape, and you kept adjusting them like they weren't yours. Plus, I saw you pull up in the parking lot. Someone who drives a vintage Mercedes that well-maintained probably doesn't usually wear paint-stained sweatpants. Sarah's jaw dropped. You knew. I'm a single dad of a 7-year-old girl, Mark said gently. I've become pretty good at seeing through costumes and defenses. Emma wears her princess dress when she's feeling vulnerable. You wore, well, this. They both laughed, the sound genuine and freeing. So what now? Sarah asked. Mark reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers, asking permission. She gave it, sliding her fingers into his. Now, he said, how about you come over for dinner next week? Fair warning, Emma will interrogate you about everything from your favorite color to whether you believe in unicorns. And I'll probably burn the pasta because I'll be nervous. That sounds perfect, Sarah said, meaning it completely. As they stood to leave, Mark paused. For what it's worth, I would have been just as interested if this was really how you dressed every day. The clothes don't matter. But the woman who tests people's character, who gives anonymously to sick kids, who shows up authentically even when she's scared, that's someone worth knowing. Sarah felt something fundamental shift inside her. For years, she'd been protecting her heart by hiding behind tests and walls and carefully constructed defenses. But Mark had seen through all of it, not because he was trying to get past her barriers, but because he was genuinely interested in the person she actually was. 3 months later, when Emma presented Sarah with a hand-painted birdhouse, for your backyard, so our birds can visit you too, Sarah realized that sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with perfect appearances or impressive first impressions, but with two people brave enough to show up as themselves, messy, real, and beautifully human.